This video was brought to you by Squarespace.
Kick it over.
Hello, my multitudinous, interactable, physics-based friends. I'm Arlo, and today we're talking about Astro Bot. This game was built upon the groundwork laid by Astro's Playroom. Many are hailing this as Sony's answer to Mario. But is Astro Bot really... Let's just roll the review. I'm gonna be doing this for a bit. Playing Astro Bot is like finding Bigfoot. But not just finding him and having lunch with him. You know, grabbing a bite to eat, maybe going to see a show or something after. Because Astro Bot is an exceedingly rare game. Being a 3D platformer certainly makes it a bit rare. It's true that the genre once had a heyday, and since then it's not gotten nearly as much love, yada yada. But modern 3D platformers do exist. In fact, indie developers are putting out awesome platformers all the time if you know where to look for them. That's the thing right there though. Those games are made by indies. They're amazing, but they are somewhat limited by those smaller budgets and smaller teams. So then, what makes Astro Bot rarer is that it's a 3D platformer produced by a big AAA publisher, and one with a good budget. But see, that doesn't quite do it either. When you ask who else in the industry is making games like that, the objectively correct answer is Nintendo, of course. Mario is keeping the classic platformer alive. Boy, even then, those games don't release very often, and Nintendo isn't producing nearly as many similar games as they could, or as I would like. Beyond Nintendo, you've got relevant titles popping up here and there. Crash 4 was good, though it sold a measly 5 million copies, so Activision Blizzard canceled Crash 5 immediately. Guess Crash is dead again. New Super Lucky's Tale and Psychonauts 2 both released within the last few years. Those were good. Sonic is still making games with 3D levels, though I'd argue that most of them don't quite scratch that 3D platformer itch for me. And while fun, they often lack that level of polish that elevates the experience. And you've got to give Sony credit. Astro Bot isn't a completely out-of-the-blue anomaly. If anyone after Nintendo produces 3D platformers somewhat consistently, it's them. We got Sackboy: A Big Adventure a few years ago, and Ratchet & Clank certainly seems to count as a platformer, albeit one with a pretty big focus on guns. So really then, what exactly makes Astro Bot feel so rare? It's not just that it's a 3D platformer. It's not just that it's a 3D platformer produced by a AAA publisher, when most of those treat the genre as this antiquated, almost taboo thing. As though kids these days are much too cool to play anything without guns in it. No, Astro Bot is rare because it's an honest-to-goodness, movement-centric, Mario-style collectathon 3D platformer with that juice. Let's rewind back to Nintendo. Mario games aren't just fun because they make you feel nostalgic or whatever. They're fun because they got that juice, that special something that makes them easy to pick up and impossible to put down. That extra bit of polish and charm and genius design that makes the release of each one feel like an event. Perhaps on some level, it's unfair to constantly bring up Nintendo and Mario when talking about Astro Bot, but if anything, it's the product of this sad world we live in, where games like this are so rare. Nintendo is the only company that consistently produces games in this style and of this quality. That's the simple fact of the matter. And their standard of quality is so high that comparing Astro Bot to a Nintendo game is only a compliment. Astro Bot feels like a Nintendo game because it's got the juice, it's got the mojo, and it's such a unicorn of a title coming from Sony, so enchanted as they are by the allure of more complex, mature, and lucrative fare. Their big push for live service games over the last few years, their growing reputation for producing almost nothing but prestige AAA titles. Again, they've done plenty with the 3D platformer genre over the years, But Astro Bot is something else entirely in my eyes. Perhaps it was just luck that we got here. After they created a quirky little VR game for the PSVR, Sony let Team Asobi create a quirky little pack-in game for the PS5. This was more of a tech demo than anything, a chance to show off the controller's fancy new features and drum up a little nostalgia for PlayStation properties. But Astro's Playroom was frustratingly good. Asobi did such a good job that it was kind of distressing reaching the end and being like, okay, but where's the rest of it, man? Why would you spend all that time to cook a single bite of filet mignon? That doesn't make sense. The game showed so much promise, the team showed so much skill, and we are so fortunate that Sony looked at that quote-unquote tech demo and ultimately did the right thing and gave them the opportunity to turn Astro Bot into a full game. And now Sony has a game that's so finely polished, so charming, so playful, so purely and genuinely playful that it's basically impossible to avoid bringing up Mario in the discussion, because doing so is one of the only ways to accurately describe what Astro Bot achieves. There are a few reasons a platformer like this benefits from a bigger budget, and the first is that a higher budget means more gameplay polish. One reason I believe at least 3D platformers are relatively rare is that it's a deceptively tricky genre to play with. Movement physics are hard to pin down, and Mario only feels as good as he does to control because Nintendo has the time, money, and expertise to tweak those moves and those physics until they feel perfect. And after nailing down a movement system, designing a world around it is easier said than done. This is why even games released back in the platformer heyday oftentimes don't feel all that great to play nowadays. Making a genuinely good 3D platformer is difficult. Astro Bot feels perfect. That's one reason you can easily compare it to Mario. You pick up the controller, you move Astro around, and you're like, yeah, okay, this is perfect. It's like slipping on an old pair of shoes, getting into the car you've driven every day for 10 years. The controls are simple. You can move. You can punch, and if you hold down the button, you do a little spin. You can jump and glide by shooting lasers out of Astro's feet, which is a really simple little thing, yet being able to damage enemies and objects below is a very clever addition the game utilizes a lot. Then, if you happen to have an ability, you can hit the triggers to use it, and that's it. That's the moveset. It's not just the simplicity that makes it feel good, though. It's that budget, that juice, that crazy level of polish. If you look closely, you can see all these tiny little ways the game sands off every rough edge imaginable, making for an experience that is 100% smooth, free from any and all frustrating jank. For just one small example, there are these platforms that you move by spinning on, and if you jump from one onto another, even if you're almost done with your spin animation, the game will keep you spinning anyway so you can chain these platforms together. Again, a small thing, but one that keeps you moving, makes using these platforms feel good every single time. And you'll find these little details all over the place, though maybe you actually won't, because I'm sure most of them are completely invisible to the player. They did everything they could to make the game feel good at all times, which is why even when you're just beating up basic enemies and jumping across platforms, it's fun. If you want to do something, you can do it. You'll rarely, if ever, struggle to accomplish any task. If you die, it was your fault. Nothing feels unfair. Do not keep watching this video until I remind you that it was brought to you by Squarespace. Squarespace made building my website, Arlo Recommends, easy as pie. I just started with the template, and before long, I was looking at a slick, professional site. Didn't require a single line of code. I really mean anyone can do it. Whether you're tweaking the homepage or creating content, formatting text and embedding stuff, it's all intuitive. You can even schedule your content to go out whenever you want, and you can link your social media accounts so posts about your content are automatically generated. Then you can browse your built-in analytics to see how your content is doing, and Squarespace offers lots of powerful extensions if you ever need something more. To try out Squarespace for yourself, head to squarespace.com for a free trial. Then when you're ready to launch, head to squarespace.com/Arlo to save 10% off your first website or domain. And now for today's recommendation, this Metroid documentary. My good friend Brendan runs a YouTube channel called The Crawl. Super good stuff, and he put together a feature-length documentary where various Metroid fans, many of which may be familiar to you, talk about why they love the series so much. He put a tremendous amount of work into it, and it is worth your time. Thanks again to Squarespace. Please keep watching this video now. But of course, polished gameplay needs good design to go with it, and this is another area where Team Asobi seems to naturally know what they're doing. Level design is perfect, everything flows wonderfully. Astro's simple moveset is utilized in clever ways, with every move coming into play consistently. Levels are linear, but plenty have wider areas to play around in and explore, and they're all stuffed with secrets and coins. Most levels grant Astro some kind of power-up, usually in the form of a happy little animal bot that sits on his back, which is just too cute. I mean, look at the little dog, come on. And instead of these power-ups being temporary and losable, they always stick with you until the end of the level, so everything is built around them. And the genius of these abilities is twofold. They're always very simple. You never transform into something else entirely. They never change the gameplay in some dramatic way. They usually complement your own moveset, or they just add one single new idea to the mix. This means that each one can be mastered immediately with little to no practice. You just pick them up and dive in. And furthermore, every one empowers you. They're all so useful in their own ways that while you're using them, it feels like you could never live without them. They make individual elements of the game so much easier, and they make the whole thing way more fun. But you feel that way about each ability in turn. Every time you pick up a new one, you marvel at how cool it is. But then you pick up a different ability in a different level and go, whoa, this is amazing. I could never live without this. And then you eventually go back to the first one and go, oh yeah, this one's great. They could have made a game where you eventually amass all these abilities and you can use them whenever you want, and that probably would have been a good game. But having access to just one at a time helps maintain a pleasant level of simplicity and creates a very fun dynamic. It keeps the gameplay changing constantly and prevents any one ability from making the whole game too easy. It's okay that in this level, I can punch enemies from super far away. There's basically no challenge, because the next level won't be this way. It's okay that I can rocket up to any place I want. Verticality is no longer an issue, because this is temporary. It's the fun of feeling like you're constantly besting some aspect of the game, almost like cheating, when of course you're just playing it how it's meant to be played. It just feels that good to have all these limitations and to overcome them one at a time. And when you add all this together, the polish, the basic controls, the simple yet empowering abilities, and the pitch-perfect level design, you know what you get. You get another Nintendo comparison. 3D Mario games, they're really great, but the first few were a real mixed bag, just like most other 3D platformers. Some sequences were just frustrating and didn't perform the way it felt like they were supposed to. Some modes of gameplay were unpolished and unfun. Galaxy, that was about when Nintendo figured out how to make Mario games that were just pure fun, all the way through. Largely frictionless experiences. That's Astro Bot, and it's another reason this game is such a rare gem. It's always fun. Every second of the experience is enjoyable. Most games have highs and lows, but this game is nothing but highs and higher highs. And everything we've covered so far is to say nothing of the game's presentation. This is another reason Astro Bot's higher budget puts it on another level. Every single little visual detail that goes into a game has to be created by an artist, animated, coded, tested. Again, time, money, expertise. Yet, you wouldn't know that by looking at Astro Bot, because the game doles out stunning art and clever effects and visual gags like charm is an infinite resource. It's cliche for a game reviewer to talk about charm, isn't it? Whenever a charming game comes along, we struggle to find the right metaphor. This game is oozing with charm. It's bursting with charm. It's spewing and rupturing with charm. But Astro Bot's charm levels, they're so high that hyperbolic metaphor eludes me. It is safest to simply say that this is maximum charm. That's really it right there. It really just feels like it's as charming as a game can possibly be. It is maximum charm saturation. Every inch of the game world, every moment of the experience is packed with fun, creative flair. And you know what? I'm gonna go out on a limb here. I think this is one area where Astro Bot actually beats Nintendo at their own game. Nintendo is great at charm. They're the masters of charm. Their games are oozing and overflowing and projectile charming all over the place, all that good stuff. But it's like I said, Astro Bot takes it to the maximum degree. The sheer volume of unique elements, visual and otherwise, meant to do nothing but make the player smile, feels unprecedented. It feels like such a gift. It feels like I'm being spoiled. Why would they do so much work for me? But let's get more specific. First, have you heard the music in this game? Have you heard the music? The first level, the very first level, it smacks you in the face with a track so good, it's just like, all right, call Jeff Keighley. Call him right up. Astro Bot gets Best Music at the Game Awards this year, and I will not accept any other outcome. This song is Astro Bot's Bob-omb Battlefield. It needs a Smooth McGroove version yesterday. I had to make a video about how it's been stuck in my head for a week straight, morning, noon, and night. I mean, the whole soundtrack is nothing but bangers. Only the nastiest of jams. And some of these songs, like, I really don't know if they will ever leave my head. And like Astro's Playroom, the game utilizes the PS5 controller in many fun ways. Astro flies around on a controller, and every level starts with a little section where you steer by tilting your actual controller, like the gyro. Over the years, I have learned that motion-controlled flight is only really fun in short bursts, and Astro Bot recognizes this. You rarely have to be on your controller ship long, mostly just for these little stage intros, and it's perfect. But then, whenever you rescue a bot, they hang out in your controller, and you can tilt them around and flick them up into the air. They're there every time you pause, too. You can always check in on them. The game makes you consistently aware of your actual physical controller, and it translates so flawlessly into the game that it starts to feel like a real link between you and the game world. Like there's a real psychological effect at play here. Oh, even better, though, is the game's use of the adaptive triggers and the UHD rumble, whatever Sony calls it. The haptics. Usually this stuff feels slightly gimmicky and unnecessary to me. Like, it's cool, but I could take it or leave it. But here, it's implemented so well that it increases the sense of immersion to a shocking degree. Everything you touch, everything you walk on, you hear it, for one. The sound design is simply incredible, and then you feel it in the controller, and your brain is convinced that on some level, you're really there. And little things like the way the trigger resists and then releases when you break open a gotcha ball. Oh, it feels incredible. I can't get enough of it. It's another way the game plays with you, feeds you all these little delights. And then visually, the game is a feast for the eyes. It's funny because every single creature in this universe seems to be a robot of some kind, yet everything is so vibrant and alive. Environments are rich with detail, background vistas are shockingly gorgeous, character designs are consistently fun, effects are flawless, action sequences and boss battles are spectacular affairs. Cartoony visuals are easier to render with their more basic geometry, all the simple lines and textures, and Astro Bot uses that to its advantage. Since it's not busy rendering photorealistic skin textures and individual strands of hair and all that, it can put every ounce of the PS5's horsepower into making these simpler, more cartoony graphics shine like a diamond. The resolution is crystal clear, even when I'm pretty close to the TV, and the game runs at a buttery smooth. I'm talking buttery with a capital B, 60 FPS, with literally zero noticeable dips or stutters. Textures are so sharp. Lighting is so natural that you feel like you can reach into the TV and touch it. Combined with the controller haptics, it makes for materials, glass and plastic and metal, that genuinely seem real. I walk over them with Astro, and it feels like I'm running my hand over them. It's crazy. And I have never in all my days played a game with such a penchant for showing off. It's a show-off game. This is one big show-off. In every level, you'll find leaves, rocks, balls, all sorts of objects in vast quantities. And each thing has its own physics. And you'll find yourself wowed again and again and again, and yet the game will just keep one-upping itself. Just keep adding more and more objects, pushing the limit until you reach a point where there's so many objects on screen and the game still refuses to drop a single frame, and you just throw up your hands and go, okay, it's magic. It's magic. Literal magic. It turns the game into one giant toy box. I can't even tell you how much time I've spent simply playing with these objects, and getting a person to mess around that much for the simple joy of it, that's an achievement. And the thing is, it even reaches a point where it stops feeling like a gimmick. You know, it's not just some cool little next-gen trick like you think it is initially. It feels like a genuine advancement in the art of video games. The designers knew how to utilize these crazy active physics in ways that actually serve the gameplay. The biggest example is surfaces that crumble and fall away when walked on or hit with your lasers. It's so realistic. The individual pieces that break off are so small, and this ends up having a real effect on how scenarios play out. There are even challenges where you've got to carve out the space around enemies and make them fall. Then you've got liquid and goop and lava that move with real physics in a way I have never seen in a game before, like real, true liquid water. And then you've got sections where you're cooling off lava using water, which is, you know, something I've done dozens of times by now, but it's not just big pads of cooled lava. It's all these individual bits working together. It's a toy. It's this big show-off thing that exists just to make you say, wow, look at all these next-gen effects. But then it actually spills over into this is the future of games territory. It starts to feel like a privilege, you know, like something genuinely exciting and potentially very useful. How is Astro Bot, of all things, the most technically impressive game I've played this generation? Astro Bot has a lot going for it and would function very well as a completely standalone experience. Yet it's got one more element that elevates it even further. Like previous Astro Bot experiences, the game is packed with references to Sony IPs. In fact, you spend most of the game rescuing these little bots, and more than half of them are dressed up like characters. Even if the bots were just there for you to collect, that still would have been great. That would have made for a really nice little nostalgia collectible kind of thing. But the devs did everything possible to honor and play with these characters and the games they come from. None of them are called by their actual names. Instead, the game relies on these very funny, descriptive non-names, and they've got equally funny one-sentence blurbs to go with them. Most of these bots have items you can collect from the gacha machine, which gives them these special animations that play out when you interact with them. Some of these game series are actually integrated into the levels themselves. And I'm not even a big Sony guy. I've had most of their systems, but I haven't played all their games. I've never really been into all of their really primary IPs over the years. And even I found myself smiling from ear to ear more times than I could count while playing through the game for the first time. Many of these characters and references reach all the way back to my childhood, and I'm particularly happy that they've included IPs that had a strong presence on PlayStation early on, but that aren't necessarily first-party exclusives. This means that we get Resident Evil characters, for example, which is just so delightful. On that note, I will admit that these references are kind of a double-edged sword. They're delightful, but there is an element of weirdness to it all. Everywhere you look, you see IPs that have been long abandoned. Characters from games that Sony wouldn't be caught dead making these days. Or series that were once associated with PlayStation, but aren't in the slightest anymore because Sony has a long history of not holding on to properties, not securing exclusivity. But it's not too hard to look past that and just enjoy the game as a huge celebration of PlayStation's history. You've got the fact that Astro rides around on a DualSense controller and all his friends live in a big PS5, and you've got all the character bots from throughout this long, rich history, but then you'll see like the X, circle, triangle, and square shapes popping up anywhere and everywhere. The game is a love letter through and through. And honestly, as a Nintendo fan, I'm kind of jealous. I'll admit it, I'm jealous. I want more crossover stuff like this. Nintendo does have a big crossover series, obviously, but Smash is a fairly technical fighting game, and honestly, I'm just not really into those kinds of games. And they incorporate IPs from Nintendo's entire history. I'm certainly not downplaying how good of a job they do of celebrating Nintendo. But most of it is more like a bunch of Nintendo elements mashed together and existing at the same time. The most character we get is from the fighter reveal animations, but those aren't very long, and that kind of characterization is largely missing in the actual gameplay. Astro Bot feels like a celebration on a deeper level. By turning all these characters into cute little bots, it can play with them in any way it wants. You collect them and they become your little companions, and they hang around your base and help you reach stuff, so you feel like you're all part of one big team. As a platformer, the game can incorporate visual and gameplay elements from these other series into the experience as needed. The format just offers so much freedom. It's a celebration of a company's legacy that feels particularly satisfying to me. And I can't help but wish I had something like this for Nintendo, where I could collect all these characters and explore their worlds and use their abilities. When Amiibo first hit the scene, I dreamed of a big Nintendo crossover adventure, and Astro Bot has dredged up those feelings of yearning all over again. It's hard to find fault in a game this wonderfully polished and designed, but Arlo finds a way, doesn't he? I've got a few small criticisms, but mainly I just feel like for all the game does, it's also holding itself back very slightly. I think the simplicity serves it overall, but sometimes it feels like they could have done a little bit more with what they created. For instance, there's a great lack of enemy variety. I really do think they could have come up with a couple more interesting enemies. And the game is very, very easy most of the time. Many of the design decisions make it seem that this was developed with a very young audience in mind, even younger than the kind of audience Nintendo tends to shoot for. Checkpoints are constant, every couple of feet sometimes. The hover ability mitigates much of the platforming challenge. You can't even fall off a ledge accidentally. The game literally stops you from falling unless you purposefully jump. And I just have to wonder why this is. Anyone enjoying all these PlayStation references is either old enough to have grown up with these classic series, or they are old enough to be playing modern PlayStation games, which are all very mature. I just have to imagine that the vast majority of the game's audience is adults. And see, I know I can hear the comments now. It's not just that I wish the game was harder and catered to my hardcore gamer needs. It's more that I wish it spent a little more time being an honest-to-goodness platformer. Most of your time in the game will be spent snooping around for bots and puzzle pieces. There's a lot of stopping, and it affects the pacing. I like when a game feels like a full experience, then on top of that, you can get more playtime out of it by going for the collectibles. But with Astro Bot, collecting everything kind of is the game. If you ignore the more hidden stuff, you will fly through it in probably a few hours. You'll only hit that 12 or so hour mark if you go for 100%. And I find myself wishing for a bit more straight up gameplay. There are a few extra tricky challenges to tackle here and there, and these are a delight. When the game decides to finally give you a sequence where the goal is just to get to the end instead of constantly hunting for secrets, it's a wildly good time. But it never lasts long. It's a rare case of actually wanting a game to have more padding, more fluff. I guess the gameplay feels so good that it makes me greedier than usual. I find myself wishing for at least a bit more. I'm not too broken up about it though. It's hard to be disappointed with something bordering on pure perfection. And the game being skewed toward a younger audience is certainly working for my nephews. One is 8, he's been playing Nintendo games since he was literally 2, and he's in heaven. 3D platformers, they're almost universally approachable, and ones this good don't come along every day. He has had a few complaints about the low difficulty and the lack of enemy variety, which is pretty funny. Maybe it runs in the family. But no, he's just loving it. And his little brother, 5 years old, hasn't taken to games quite as strongly as him. He thinks they're cool, but he's just not quite as drawn to them. And yet, I am happy to say that Astro Bot is the first game he's ever gotten really into. The first game he just can't wait to play when he gets home from school. So far, he mainly plays the first level over and over, but he's having a blast. And just minutes before writing this section, I was with him when he jumped over the floating platforms right at the beginning for the first time without any help. He was so proud of himself, and him and his brother have been taking turns playing and watching each other. It's so adorable. So yeah, there's your proof that this game is something special right there. The thing about Astro Bot, though, is that it's not just a celebration of PlayStation. It's just a celebration of anything, of you. These bots do nothing but party. Every time you save one of them, it's a little party. Beat a challenge within a stage, it's a party. Reach the end of a stage, it's a party. Recover one of your ship parts, it's a huge party. There is an unbounded positive energy that permeates nearly every second of the experience. The game does everything it can on a technical level with its stunning visuals and haptics to make you feel like you're part of this world. And with that touch point, it pulls you in emotionally. It uplifts you, congratulates you, beckons you to keep going, keep having fun. It caters to the kid inside you, but it never panders. With all the cynical shared IP universes going around these days, Astro Bot ran the risk of feeling like nothing more than one big commercial for PlayStation and its products, just a way to bank on nostalgia and get little kids into the ecosystem. But there is nothing but genuine joy to be found here. Instead of an old man with a backwards cap and a skateboard waving candy in my face, this game is like a kid, inviting me to grab a toy and come play on the playground as though I'm a kid too. It tugs at my heart in a way that very few games do. And I keep praising the game for daring to be a 3D platformer with a good budget and real juice. But on that note, it also represents something else that's very important. Year after year, the game industry struggle. I know, I'm sorry, I gotta go into it. It's struggling. We've seen extremely high-profile flops, mainly in the multiplayer scene. Mass layoffs across nearly every major company. Corporate greed has cultivated this culture of trend chasing and inflated budgets, where every game has to be the biggest, look the best, sell the most. But for one final Nintendo comparison, Astro Bot imitates many of that company's games in perhaps the most important way possible. It's a small to medium-sized game. It's single-player only, with no online elements or microtransactions. It focuses on a relatively small number of ideas and executes them perfectly rather than trying to tick every box possible. It had a high budget as far as platformers go, but compared to other Sony games, its budget was very modest. I'll be surprised if it sells as much as Horizon or God of War, but I have no doubt it will be a decent success and make Sony some money. Maybe not all the money in the world, not an endless river of money, but some. Focusing on fun first and foremost. Modest games with modest budgets. Being okay with only modest successes as long as the devs are paid and the fans are happy. This is the Nintendo model. And it's working for them. They're the only big company still willing to follow such a model, and it's made them extremely successful. They make a heck of a lot more money than PlayStation does, I can tell you that. So I hope Astro Bot does well, and more than anything, I hope that reception to it sends a message to Sony. Hey, there's a reason this game made a big splash. There's a reason you had to shut down Concord, your $100 million live service multiplayer shooter, 2 weeks after launch, and on the same day, no one could stop talking about Astro. There's a reason games exactly like this one are making your competitors so much money. And I hope the game industry at large gets the message as well. How about just make cool games? You know? Have you considered that? What about just making cool games and selling them? I'm sorry I couldn't just talk about how good you are, Astro Bot. I'm sorry we've got to make all these comparisons to Nintendo and bring up the struggles of the industry, but unfortunately, this is your burden to bear. You're not just a good game. You're an important game. The one we all needed this year. You can go now. I'm gonna be doing this just a little bit longer.